the United States has basically handed China the electric vehicle market for the next 20 years. So did Europe, by the way. Europe delayed the transformation to electric vehicles, said we produce great internal combustion engines, we're going to continue to do that. The world actually needs electric vehicles because of the climate crisis. So all of this is to say the real hard work is to think ahead. Mm-hmm. The country, by the way, in my experience of working all over the world in the last 40 years, that thinks ahead the most is China. Mm-hmm. China's success is not random. China's success actually is a lot of forward-looking planning. In 2014, China issued a document called Made in China 2025. And it wasn't a protectionist policy, it was we need to invest in the technology so we can be at the forefront. I think in 8 of the 10 sectors that were identified there, China succeeded in reaching the forefront. In 2017, China made a plan for artificial intelligence. This is already 8 years ago. DeepSeek didn't just come out of nowhere, it came out of a long-term strategy. So this is hard work that actually pays off. This is what every government should do. This is what every country should do, is look ahead. Now, you mentioned very interesting idea. We got a president who doesn't understand and maybe doesn't care about the future in the same way. But just to say, the biggest issue on the planet should be the climate crisis, not all the things we're endlessly talking about. And every part of the world is going to suffer terribly by what has been built in terrible, very dangerous climate change. It's out of the headlines. But, you know, I had a very difficult job. I was the director of an institute with 300 climate scientists for 14 years, some of the world's leading climate scientists. The reason it was a hard job is that every week they came up and told me, it's worse than we thought. They would give me endlessly grim news. And the lead climate scientist at Columbia University is a man named James Hansen, who I regard as the world's leading climate scientist. And he produced a study in January that said it's much worse than we have thought. The world's temperature has gone up by 0.3 degrees Celsius in 3 years. We have had 21 months of the last 22 above 1.5 degrees. That's the new baseline, by the way. That's not because of an El Nino effect. That's the new baseline. We already blew the limit that we set 10 years ago in Paris that we said we would not exceed. We're already above it. And what Hansen says is we're rising at an accelerating rate. Now the average rate is probably between 0.3 and 0.4 degrees Celsius per decade now on average. So we'll be at 2 degrees excess. What all of this means is profound danger 20 years from now, 25, 30, but we're already seeing terrible danger today. I don't want to minimize what's already happening. Los Angeles burned down, massive forest fires in Korea last week. It's everywhere. My wife and I are nonstop traveling. Every single place we go is some kind of climate crisis, literally. It's a drought, it's floods, it's heat waves, it's pest infestations, it's forest fires. And the sea level is going to rise by many meters, which is not great for Istanbul, by the way, and not great for coastal areas. It's very dangerous what is built into the system. Now, what is Trump's answer for this? Yesterday, King Donald issued an executive decree to bring back coal. It's willful destruction of well-being, willful. And that is, again, he pulled out of the Paris Agreement. What I'm hoping, ladies and gentlemen, is the other 192 members of the UN have to say, no, we're not entering a crazy land. We're going to take care of our future. Right now, I live in a crazy land. But the rest of the world has to avoid the crazy land, has to avoid normalizing this.
I don't know if any of you saw it during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. An Australian artist, cartoonist, drew a cartoon which had the first tidal wave, kind of a tsunami of economic recession. There was a bigger tidal wave tsunami behind it, which was COVID-19, and then a huge one over both of them, which was the climate crisis. So get ready, I'll give you a chance to ask a few questions, but I just wanted to address one final issue to the minister. And I was getting a bit depressed, Professor, when you were talking about that. I tell my kids since they were born, they're now 21 and 19, live anywhere you want in the world, but don't live near the coast or near a river. The professor is saying that the climate crisis is going to be one of, probably, I'm kind of, putting words into your mouth, Professor, that deglobalization, if it becomes more and more of a popular sentiment and policy, the climate crisis will be affected because of a lack of cooperation through deglobalization. Minister, what other big dangers do you see if the trend of deglobalization gathers pace?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, in addition to the impending climate crisis, which could have a devastating impact on the future of humanity, I think we are faced with significant headwinds that already exist, but some of them could become more complicated. One of them is high global indebtedness. Mm-hmm. If protectionism, clearly goes the way it is today, meaning if we really go into these trade wars, and if this leads to higher inflation, even for a couple of years, if that's the case, then that means long-term interest rates are likely to rise. And if that is so, then many countries are already struggling to manage their debt service. Global indebtedness, if you look at it, overall indebtedness was 328% last year. 328% of GDP. Yeah. This is huge. When interest rates are very low, no big deal. But when rates go up, clearly that's a big issue. I mean, look at the Turkish scene. Yes, we've had a domestic domestic issue that led to some market turbulence, but what happened post-April 2, CDS have gone through the roof. CDS are country risk premium. Our external bond yields, 10-year, 5-year, they all gone up significantly on the back of these tariffs. I think there are already many countries, according to UN, that pay more on interest on that than what they, are able to earmark for education and healthcare combined. So I think we already have issues such as indebtedness that the current trend could exacerbate. An aging population already could create huge constraints on public finances going forward. So those are some of the additional headwinds that exist that could actually serve as speed limit or a drag on growth. So I think the world, and I agree with Professor that the world has to, rather than going, down this path, we need to cooperate more. We need to work more closely on climate change, on how to address other problems, because protectionism will also lead to probably global inequalities. Mm-hmm. If you don't allow AI chips to be freely available to everyone, clearly that's a big issue, because then many countries will be left behind in terms of tapping this AI that has immense potential to boost productivity. Protectionism is not limited to trade of goods and service. It's now associated with financial flows, with diffusion of technologies through FDI. So clearly, I think we'll be worse off unless we cooperate, unless we return to multilateralism. But sadly, right now, it's all about shift to minilateralism. A few countries getting together, but that's not enough. I think issues are too big for few countries to address. I think, the rest of the world should come together. So yes, there are significant challenges.